one can think a few more partisan sort of bitter times than during the sort of impeachment era against Bill Clinton, where Democrats and Republicans were in political war in Washington. And yet McCain did emerge out of that era with a relationship with particularly Hillary Clinton. When she came into the Senate, was sort of the star coming in. He knew what it was like to be kind of, focused on by the media and having that kind of star quality. There aren't that many senators. We were just talking in the break trying to think of who has that kind of star quality now. There are only a handful of people who have it. What do you make of the fact that John McCain was able to be both fiercely partisan? I mean, he voted for much of Trump's agenda. He was definitely a Republican, but also managing to have those kind of relationships with his rivals.
Well, you're right, Joy. He voted to impeach Bill Clinton in the Senate, and yet he became friends not only with Hillary Clinton, but with Bill Clinton, came to Clinton Global Initiative when he was running for president and praised Clinton's work. He was an extraordinary person. The first time I met him was at White House Correspondents' Dinner. He came up to me to praise my critique of Whitewater on television, which he told me he'd enjoyed. And he didn't agree with what I was saying, but he just had that kind of spirit of reaching across, of friendship, of kindness. He'd spend an hour on the phone with a reporter to talk about other people and issues that weren't necessarily going to benefit him at all. That was just his style. He had an inimitable style that really embraced.
Yeah, and Mark Updegrove, the rivalry with George W. Bush was overcome. The rivalry with the Clintons was overcome. It is unusual that the ongoing enmity between the current president of the United States and the late John McCain, that according at least to the Washington Post, Donald Trump carried right until the end, not making a statement directly about John McCain at all, and finally ultimately tweeting his deepest sympathies to the family of John McCain. That went out last night. But notably, Donald Trump is not going to be at that funeral. How unusual is that as an historical fact that the current president of the United States will likely not be at the funeral of one of the last remaining sort of lions of the Senate?
Very unusual, Joy. And I think if you look at John McCain's legacy, it is in stark contrast to the presidency of Donald Trump. You played at the top of the last hour a rally that John McCain attended in 2008 around his presidential campaign, in which a woman said she didn't trust President Obama. He was an Arab. I think she was probably searching for the word Muslim. And he said, "No, ma'am. He is a decent family man, citizen who I happened to have disagreements with." That's all you need to know about John McCain. He refused to stoop to demagoguery to further his political ends. And if you look at the ascent of Donald Trump, he exploited that very thing in order to put himself in the political spotlight.
Yeah, and EJ, John McCain, to the end, whether or not he supported individual things, tax cuts, et cetera, that Donald Trump did, to the end, he really did not get on board the way some of his colleagues, even some of his friends on that side of the aisle in the Senate, got on board with all of Trumpism. Here is John McCain giving a speech when he received the Liberty Medal from the National Constitution Center. This is in October of 2017, talking about what he called half-baked nationalism. Take a listen.
To fear the world we have organized and led the 3/4 of a century, to abandon the ideals we have advanced around the globe, to refuse the obligations of international leadership and our duty to remain the last best hope of Earth for the sake of some half-baked, spurious nationalism cooked up by people who would rather find scapegoats than solve problems. Is as unpatriotic as an attachment to any other tired dogma of the past that Americans consigned to the ash heap of history.
And EJ, he may not have mentioned Donald Trump by name, but Donald Trump probably got the message.
That little hint of a smile he gave at the end when the crowd roared told us everything we needed to know about what he thought of Donald Trump. Donald Trump obviously opposed everything he fundamentally agreed with, notably the strength of the Western Alliance, the importance of human rights, but he was also as different a person and a public figure as you could possibly be from John McCain. This morning I went back to a quotation that John McCain deeply loved and cited from Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, who wrote a very important book called Man's Search for Meaning. The quotation was, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." And I think everybody who had disagreements with McCain during his life, liberals didn't like where he was on the war. They certainly didn't like his choice of Sarah Palin for vice president, which I think came back to hurt him. Conservatives disagreed with him on political money, disagreed obviously with his vote to save Obamacare, and yet they knew always that in the end McCain was his own person and he was going to do things the way he thought he should. And by the way, he'd go back and apologize when he thought he did something too political, as in supporting the Confederate flag in South Carolina. He went back during the primary and he went back and said, look, I did that for votes. I was wrong. There aren't many politicians who do stuff like that.
Yeah, indeed. And you know, Jennifer, with the passing of John McCain, it does feel